This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. 4 minutes past 7 on LBC. Do watch us over the next 3 hours. We're streaming the whole programme live on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel. Well, another day, another rambling speech from the President of the United States, this time at Davos. But it was the same subject matter, really, as last night. He said that he wanted to annex Greenland, but ruled out using military force. So he's backed down on that. He also backed down on threats of military action to Iran if they continued killing protesters. They did continue killing protesters, and there was no military action. He backed down on Chinese tariffs some time ago. He does seem to have a reputation for issuing bellicose threats and then not following through with them. He's become what's known as the taco president. Trump always chickens out. And I want to ask you in this hour one question. After he's backed down from using the US military in both Iran and Greenland, is it time to stop taking Trump's threats so seriously? Or do you think, well, no, we have to take him seriously? Any American president that issues military or trade threats would be silly if we didn't take him seriously. There are some people who say, well, you have to take him seriously, but not literally. 0345 6060 973. Well, during his speech at Davos this afternoon, the president said this.
We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland.
Well, he's kind of the meatloaf president, isn't he? Sort of, I'll do anything to get Greenland, but I won't do that. Simon Marks joins us, LBC's US correspondent. Do you believe he's the taco president, Simon?
I'm not convinced he is the taco president, Ian. Certainly not on a permanent, you can always trust that it's going to happen basis. And I'm not sure the extent to which Donald Trump actually climbed down today. It felt to me like he was climbing up, in fact, given that yesterday he did not strike the kind of resolute tone towards Greenland that he struck in that speech at Davos, and made some absolutely breathtaking and entirely false claims, particularly about the history of Greenland, insisting that in the past it was owned by the United States. It's part of North America. It's our own territory, he said. He falsely suggested that Greenland had been handed over by the United States to Denmark at the end of the Second World War, which is not the case, that it was somehow an error of history that he now needed to correct. I mean, all of this just rooted in falsehoods about the particular history of Greenland. And there were all sorts of other falsehoods that littered the speech, including, you know, his antipathy towards NATO, fueled as it is by his claim that before he became president, the United States was paying 100% of the costs for NATO. Flatly untrue. In its worst year, by Donald Trump's yardstick, the United States was paying 66% of NATO's costs, and he, of course, has addressed that, not in one presidential term, but in a second. But he sounds absolutely resolute about his determination to get his hands on Greenland. Remember that he's called today for immediate negotiations, not negotiations in his mind that are about finding an off-ramp or climbing down, negotiations about how the US can buy Greenland. And he's made it clear within the last hour that his preferred negotiator is not any of the Danish government figures that have roundly excoriated his speech today in Davos. His preferred negotiator is Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, who has vigorously defended Donald Trump in his own separate speech earlier today, and who, of course, famously called Donald Trump, to Donald Trump's eternal joy, Daddy. Daddy. Mark Rutte is the guy that Daddy wants to negotiate the handover of Greenland, and our government and every other government is now going to have to wonder whether they can trust Mr. Rutte on his own to handle that kind of negotiation.
Well, the Danish government just won't wear that, will they? Nor should they.
I mean, it seems very unlikely, but when it was put to Donald Trump today by a reporter, as he was sitting alongside Mark Rutte, who, by the way, pushed back at Donald Trump's entirely false claim that NATO has never been there for the United States and won't be there for the United States, and in his usual very carefully worded explanation to President Trump, couched it all in the fact that this was evidence that the alliance has never been stronger than it is under Donald Trump's leadership. But when it was put to the president that the Danish government had completely rejected his call for these immediate talks to begin about the acquisition of Greenland, Trump said, well, I need to hear that to my face. I don't want to hear that secondhand. They need to come and say it to my face. And anyway, I'd much rather negotiate with him. And by him, he meant the man who had called him Daddy, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
Now, Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, he's made quite a spectacular speech today, warning that world trade rules are never going to be the same again. In fact, the world will never be the same again. Now, Donald Trump also had a go at Mark Carney. If his logic over Greenland is in any way correct, then surely he should be going after Canada as well. And that's what he threatened right at the beginning of his presidency, didn't he, when he wanted to make Canada the 51st state. Is Canada next on his list, do you think? Or is that too big a bite to have?
Well, I think Canada's certainly on the list. I mean, in Donald Trump's mind, he hasn't referenced the 51st state recently, but I'm sure it's still percolating away in the back of his mind. We heard on LBC earlier from Michael Ignatieff, former leader of the Liberal Party in Canada, that he believes the Northwest Passage is very much on Donald Trump's mind as something that he would like to acquire. And I think it's important that Mark Carney, in his appearances in Davos, has used the R word, rupture, to describe what is taking place in the transatlantic relationship and indeed in his bilateral relationship with the United States. But the other point worth making, Ian, is that Donald Trump insisted today that one of the reasons why the United States has to own Greenland is because you can't defend a place if you're only leasing it or if you're only renting it. You can't defend a place unless you own it. And that's going to come as a shock to the numerous countries around the world that have treaties with the United States that guarantee that the United States will defend them, never mind NATO members. Think about South Korea, for example. Think about places like Japan. I mean, places where the United States is treaty bound to provide military assistance, to defend them. Well, the President of the United States is now saying, yeah, but if I don't own a place, I can't really be expected to defend it. I mean, take that logic to its natural conclusion, and vast areas of the world should be very nervous tonight about whether the United States has got their back, never mind whether NATO has got America's.
Simon, thank you as ever. That's Simon Marks, LBC's US correspondent.